It's lovely to have you back again at the After Dinner Leadership Podcast. And today we're going to talk a lot about generosity. And we might think about that in lots of different terms. But today we're going to think about it in the frame of leadership. Are you a generous leader? And if I read out the definition from the dictionary for generosity or being generous, showing a readiness to give more of something that is strictly necessary or expected. How do you weigh up your leadership to that definition? Today's guest has spent a lot of time looking at this topic. Joe Davis has spent over 35 years working at Boston Consulting Group. He headed up North America for BCG and is now helping leaders to help others to grow. And he's written a book called The Generous Leader, in which it contains 7 ways in which we can be a generous leader. He talks about a few of them in our conversation. And I trust that this conversation will provide a great platform for you to consider how generous you are as a leader, whether you want to be a generous leader or not. And as you find it useful, please pass it on to others so that they can learn and also benefit. Enjoy. And a warm welcome to Joe Davis around the After Dinner Leadership Podcast table. It's nice to have you with us, Joe.
It's nice to be here, Simon. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm excited.
And we have this virtual dinner table that we're sitting around. I mean, you're thousands of miles away, but close in over the power of technology. Imagine your childhood dinner table. What food reminds you of your childhood?
Oh, wow. Well, this is going to be a silly answer, but I think the main food, or two maybe, I'll say, is milk. I mean, I remember my mom was single, they got divorced and had a table. I sat in the same place all the time, and there was a half gallon of milk at my feet because I would drink that and I didn't want to share it with my 2 brothers. So milk it's not a food, I get it. Then the other food that reminds me of childhood is 3 boys, when we got home from school, back then we watched a lot of TV, we'd grab every cereal box, sit in front of the TV and finish all the cereal. I'm not sure how my mom, who was a single mom, was a school teacher, managed to keep us fed because we were not.
It's fascinating, isn't it, when you reminisce on that? Think, how on earth did they do these things? You know, it's just crazy, isn't it?
It's funny. Or you also notice the grandparents and things like that. You don't notice how they're helping, but you notice when you look back with your old, oh, wow, grandma bought that washer. That's, you don't even think about buying a washer when you're 14 or 19 or 7.
Yeah, amazing. Great. I love that little reminiscence. And if you also think about yourself as an early 20-something, what was memorable about you at that age?
That's a funny question. So, I think memorable is a big word. It also invites some egotistical responses. Probably driven, this is funny, to be successful or be a leader or just, the real truth is I didn't like it when my parents got divorced. I had to prove to my mother, this is the real truth, prove to my mother I could be good at something. When you said 20s, but I think about it, I used to sell in 5th and 6th grade. I'd go to the Kmart up nearby, buy toothpicks and cinnamon, soak them, and then sell them for 5 cents each. They cost me like nothing. So I started, then I had a paper out from grade 6 to 12 and worked in a restaurant from whenever 16 on. Now at 20, I was a college kid, although I was the head of the head resident in the dorm and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Editor of the yearbook, etc.
Well, what I'm hearing, I guess, is there's definitely a strong work ethic that was imbued in you before that age.
Yes,
that was significant.
Yeah. And I'm sure. Actually, I mentioned my grandparents a minute ago. My grandparents were wheat farmers. I just remember going back every summer. All 6 aunts and uncles of my mom were there, as traditional times. The women were cooking, the men were harvesting. Me and the other grandkids were running around being silly. But there was a work ethic instilled then, and all of my uncles and all the in-laws actually also went to college, which you say that's normal, but farm families, not necessarily. So there was and watching grandma do nothing but work. There was a work ethic.
Amazing. Now we're going to get into some of the leadership lessons that you've learned in your long career, but you've spent the best part of 40 years in consulting, or maybe longer, but at one organization, so at BCG, a renowned firm. I mean, maybe just give us a little bit of an insight. That's a long time to work within an organization. What's your lasting memory of working at BCG?
Oh my gosh. I'd say a couple things. One, I had an amazing mentor. And so that is deeply lasting, of course. Also, probably one reason I stayed 37 years.
Yeah.
The other thing that was beautiful about consulting is you only work with people. I mean, we have PowerPoint slides and all that, but you're asking people, you're working with teams to create it. Now, this is not going to be so true in the AI world, but you're working with teams to create it. And you're sharing stuff with clients and usually trying to help to get them to change. And the BCG, no plug for BCG, but the people there are quite wonderful. I mean, they're all driven, but there's no politics. We hope everybody makes partner. They don't all because it's a hard job. A lot of them quit. A lot of them don't fit. But it really was, the mentor and the phenomenal people with whom I engaged is really what I look back and remember.
Great. We might talk about that mentor as part of your 3 lessons learned, but I'm going to jump there immediately, Joe, because I love mentors come up a lot on this conversation. So, what was significant about them?
Well,
I love that you've gone to them straight away. What is it?
You don't stay 37 years in a place unless there's someone that keeps you going. Well, what was a couple of things? One, it was a he. He pushed me very, very hard to be better all the time, and not always pleasantly. I'll tell a funny story. One time he said, Joe, if I put you in a room with 4 white walls, no doors, no windows, and this guy, Philip, and ask you to solve a tough problem, and that's the only way you get out of the room, Philip will get out of the room all the time. You might not get out of the room. Wow. He said, however, when you're out of the room, if we say now, go get it done, Philip will never get it done. 0 chance. You will get it done 100% of the time. You'll find the people, the team, etc. And there was clearly there was, be as smart as you can be, I guess, whatever. I don't know about that part, but the lesson that I worked hard to collaborate, the work ethic, thinking how to work with people, there's many stories like that where he shared pushing. The other thing is, a mentor, he had my back, and I'll tell a great story on that very quickly. We were going to open the Washington, D.C. office. He was going to open it. And I was I was maybe 4 years in, so I was going to help him open it. But one time we were flying to a client, and I remember sitting in the front row, sitting in the seat bulkhead, and he says, "Hey, Joe, I got an offer to be the president of one of the clients." And I'd already moved my family to Washington. We were going to move. He was going to move down 4 months later. And I remember thinking, oh, blank, I won't say it. And I said, oh, that's great. I wasn't thinking that's great. I moved my family. And he said, no. I mean, we got back for it. He said, Joe, I got to tell you, I thought about it hard and there's puts and takes, but I've decided not to take it. I can't do that to you and Sarah. You've already moved. I've committed. Now, I talked to him about that 40 years later. He said, well, there's other reasons too, but that's what I remember. There was a guy who had my back. But I'll say at the same time, we get a mentor, the relationship is 2-way, so they're like me going, he said, hey, do you want to come to Washington with me? I probably thought about it for 4 seconds and said, yes. And that was easy enough for my wife and me. I admit that. But, your mentor will be there for you, but you have to be there for them. Not always when you want to be. So those were some of the things about this mentor was incredible for me.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. I can see the respect you have for him. Okay. So let's get into our 3 leadership lessons you wish you'd learned earlier, just at high level, first of all, and then we can dive into them.
I guess there's more detail. Yeah. I mean, 3 things I think. One is I call it perspective taking, or really spending as a leader some time to understand where your team's coming from, what's their lived experience. You don't have to know all the details. What motivates them, importantly. And so therefore, how can you inspire them to be, all they can be? So taking someone's perspective is critical. Another one I wish I'd learned, which is if you allow me in a minute, I'll tell a story about it, but really giving clear, direct, productive feedback in the moment. That is really hard when you're young, really hard. And then the other thing, which I think I constantly learned, but was, listening deeply, which is really understanding what's the question, what's in their head, but also the patience to listen, which was a bigger one for me, because I often thought, okay, I know where you're going, and I'd cut them off. And, and that's one, disrespectful, and two, stupid, because what if you don't know where they're going? So those would be three things: perspective taking, really effective feedback, and deeply and patient listening.
Great. Well, I would like to get into those in more detail. So we'll park the feedback story for a moment. Let's get into the perspective taking. You've put a particular emphasis on finding out what motivates people, and you kind of stress that point. Now, if you're in leadership development circles, learning development, that kind of is language that comes up a lot. But if that's not your thing, if you're working in some other department, how do you find out what motivates somebody?
It's one word: ask. Ask. Dude, watch and ask. And if it's it's interesting. If you're saying that, like, my son-in-law's a PMO, program management officer, and he controls nobody but has to motivate everybody around him. But there, even he and I talk about it, it's a lot of on the phone, asking questions, understanding, if it's in the business world, what are their incentives? I hate to say that, but those do drive things, and then also, what are they personally trying to achieve? What are their goals? Which you don't have to have a long heart to heart to understand that. But a lot of it is just taking the time to ask questions about a person and listen and watch for the clues about them. If they talk about, they love to play soccer, ask about their soccer game. And then you might discover, I like to get off at 3:00 every Friday to play soccer, and this is important to them. Well, now figure out how to make sure that happens. Make them work Wednesday, whatever. I'm giving a slight. So that's what I would do, or what I think I did. Over time, it became intuitive. I didn't learn it as well as I should have at the beginning.
Yeah. You've written a book about being a generous leader, is a phrase that you've used, and perspective taking being a part of that style of a generous leader. So could you just make the link for me there? How is a generous leader someone who takes, does perspective taking?
Okay. I defined a generous leader as one who gives of themselves freely, without expectation of direct personal gain, to help others develop, grow, and thrive at their full potential. And if there's a couple of things with that. One, as a leader, of course, you still have to get results. This is not all unicorns and pretty clouds. You've got to deliver. But the easiest way to deliver exceptional outcomes is when your entire team is firing, right? I mean, a client of mine said, Joe, never forget, outcomes matter. But as a leader, the sooner you move past yourself and unlock all the exceptional traits of those with whom you work, the sooner you'll get to the best outcomes. So, it's kind of obvious. If you really want to motivate and inspire people and help them be at their best, this idea of understanding a little bit where they're coming from is pretty critical.
Yeah.
And now the other thing I will say is, you can never do it for your benefit, but if your team's all humming, the odds are you're going to win, right? Your team's going to do well. The organization's going to do well. And over time, you'll do well.
Can you think of a scenario where you had someone where you initially struggled to take their perspective, perhaps kind of very different wavelengths, maybe different personality traits. And so kind of that initial, maybe not even initially, once you're in the thick of something, you've hit these conflict points, and maybe links to your second point around feedback, and we'll go there in a moment. But I'd love it to hear, how have you managed to move beyond that initial barrier, or like, I can't work with this person, through to perspective taking?
I'm thinking as you ask that, I can't work with this person. Usually in my world, if I really couldn't work with them, I'd just move on and figure out the beauty of consulting, you change teams all the time. But I can think of examples, it's a little more senior than your audience, but during COVID, the CEO, who was a business school classmate of mine, a good friend while I was head of BCG North America, we did not see eye to eye all the time. Or even, I'll put a better example. Now you've got me really thinking, another senior partner, who was very close to me, a very good friend. He's highly commercial. He did not take my perspective, nor I hit him on how to manage people. He just thought, push, push, push. What are we spending this money for? Cut costs. Now, I think there, the way to work past that, is just to talk to the person, share each other's point of view, figure out where you agree to disagree. What do eventually go to the bar and have a glass of wine or a beer together, whatever it is you do, that's gotta be part of it. But I think the main thing is not to just say, geez, he's an idiot, I disagree, he's wrong, and move away. That's not going to get you anywhere, as opposed to, hey, his name was Sandy, why do you think that? Why do you care? Why are you pushing this so hard? Yeah, but what about this perspective? I don't think many times we never agreed on that. We did not agree on how to treat teams, especially during the COVID times. He thought I was too soft. All I know is the business grew like crazy when I was in charge. So something worked, And he didn't complain about that, as I noticed. But I was going to say that when I started the CEO, same thing. It was just really, the main thing is not to turn away, but to actually engage. Simon, if we're honest, that's how you make a marriage work too, right? There's going to be times where you just don't agree with each other. That's not the time to turn away. If you're really angry, turn away for a while, but then come back and talk about it.
Yeah, very much. Well, that leads nicely, I think, into this clear, direct feedback in the moment. You said you had a story for that. What was it that comes to mind?
It's interesting so I'm going to 2 quick stories. When I was, I was in college and I was a restaurant assistant manager. I'd worked at the same restaurant through high school during the summers, and I knew the owners pretty well. One summer we had a manager who was an idiot. This is two stories. And one time I thought the owner, Ron, called me and he asked, well, how's it going? And I started ripping this manager. And guess what? Oh, his name was Ron too. He said, Joe, this is the manager. Oh my God, I thought I was going to get fired. There was a bit of a lesson in that. And there I was just afraid to tell him to his face, really. So I was complaining behind his back to the owner, which was just plain silly. That was really a lesson. One, ask who you're talking to, but more importantly, try not to talk behind someone's back, which is, and that's a version of feedback, because I might have thought of thoughtful ways to.
Where did that lead to? I want to hear the next phase. What happened?
Sorry, this is going to sound. One, he is an idiot. He didn't work very hard. He wasn't very good. And I called the owner and said, guess what I just did, who I was close with, and made sure I didn't pay the price. Sorry. Okay. And he did not last long. He was a nice fellow, but that was part of the problem. He was a nice fellow. Another quick one. I started Procter & Gamble, a sales guy. I got promoted after 2 years. And I rode with my sales reps, and 3 of them were career reps. So they were in their mid-40s. I thought they were old guys. But not that old, of course, but I was 25. And I'd ride with them every 2 weeks, and I never said anything to them about what they could do differently, because who's a 25-year-old kid to give feedback to a career sales rep? So then it came to the year-end review, and I'd written down everything this guy should do. His name's Rich. And I started launching into the review, and I probably got 3 minutes in, and Rich said, geez, Louise, Joe, what the, you ride with me every 2 weeks, and you've never told me any of this? Oh my gosh, I can't remember what I said. I just think, I froze. And, one point I walked out and my boss said, never write a review again where at the end of the year where someone hasn't heard everything on a piece of paper. But more importantly, as I reflect on that lesson, even as years went by, that guy at 45 years old or whatever did want me to give him any feedback. He could choose to take it or not. He didn't want me to keep my mouth shut. That's interesting. I really thought about this more. And that was the real point, is why the heck didn't you tell anything to help me get better, buddy? But you know what it was. I was afraid. Who am I to tell him? I haven't learned enough, as well as just not practice. I think feedback like that does take experience and learning. It's just really hard when you're junior.
Yeah. And there's a lot of social hierarchies there, isn't it? That are woven into us quite strongly in terms of where we've grown up and through education. You're going to give lots of feedback to your teachers and to other parental figures. It just doesn't. The system doesn't encourage that. There's some exceptions, but it doesn't encourage it. So, going in and having somebody that's older than you, twice the age of you, that kind of thing. You have to be. You have to really kind of buck the trend, I think, to kind of break through those
Oh, and yeah,
social
the trend
wires.
in here,
Yeah.
because I was
Yes.
manager, so it's my job,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it ain't easy. I remember
Yeah.
when I was first to BCG, but first to BCG, the first time you lead teams, man,
Yeah.
even then I was scared to death to tell them what they should do better. It takes time and it takes experience, but it takes a lesson like that guy that at least started to put in my head, hey, they want to hear feedback.
Okay, but you've established it's not about being nice, but we've got this
Yes.
word generous in our vocabulary here. So what does the generous leader do in their
Well,
feedback?
I think a few things. I think you're really, first off, is you are thinking about how do I make you, Simon, the best podcast host in the world? That's really what you're thinking, not about how I be better, how whatever. That's the first thing. You've got to actually want them to get better, to care. And then there's the next thing is, you really need to make sure you learn and think about what are person's strengths and what I need to work on. And I don't like the sandwich thing, but when you're giving people feedback, is there something they're good at that they can use to actually fill the void? But then most importantly, which I failed with Ron, not most, is, give the feedback as best you can in the moment as you walk out of a meeting, you walk out of an event. Now, if they really screwed up and they're down, don't kick them when they're down, but, think about it. But usually in the moment, and be as clear and direct as you can. I mean, mushy feedback is useless. Really quick story. One time, I was the head of my office. There was a career rep giving feedback to a person who wasn't going to make partner, and we're an upper out place at BCG. So basically, they're getting fired. And the rep was on and on and on and mushy. And even I said, are you telling the person he's out or not? And finally, the person's name was Rich again. He looked over at me and said, am I getting fired? So am I getting fired? Like 5 words. I said, yes. He said, thank you. So he didn't want to get fired, but the clarity he wanted to thank. So, mushy feedback or lack of clarity. Can I tell you one more story? Or
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
This is where if you really care about them and think about where they're coming from. I had another colleague who was transferred over from Europe, very successful partner in Europe, very successful, but he was struggling in the United States for a handful of reasons. And BCG is kind of like 3 years, and then you're in big trouble as a partner. And he was in a stage where it wasn't going so well, and it's reaching the 3 years. And I said to him, we sat down one time. I said, you got 3 choices. You go home, you quit, or I fire you. What do you pick? He said, phew, thank you for, because someone said, how could you be so direct? And how could you tell him? Well, because I know he sit there at night. He's a superstar. Now he's failing. That's all he's thinking about every night is, my gosh, they're going to fire me. Should I go home?
Yeah.
And obviously he picked to go home, and he's doing very well again. But a lot of my colleagues couldn't understand, how did you have the nerve to be so blunt? I thought, this guy, I just unlocked what he was thinking about and what's had him stuck every night. So, so the direct and blunt, and I'll stop the stories, but they do have to be wrapped in thinking about where the person is, where they're coming from, and caring about what's best for them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I want to come back to the in the moment piece. Yeah. And maybe this is off my own area where I'm still trying to get better at this and not always being as effective as I could be. And I love your thoughts in terms of, so the courage to do it, but it's like that timing piece, of if it hasn't gone particularly well, how to get that timing right. And then the day passes and then it feels, so the classic, sort of, right, I've missed the opportunity. So now it's too late. When do I now do it? And just any thoughts you have on that. There's the immediate piece of doing it, but maybe I haven't done it. So any thoughts of how do we address the in the moment piece?
Well, the in the moment, you're not allowing me to say, but I think the main thing is create habits of doing it in the moment. I mean, make it a habit. Yeah. So I'll leave that aside. And I had a mentor. My same mentor was magical. We'd walk out of a meeting, we'd in the hallway and debrief, and But if you don't do that, then, if you're starting to sweat it and it's maybe a day later, 2 days later, you could still maybe get on the phone and talk to the person. Yeah. You get 4 or 5 days later and it doesn't work. Well, what exactly happened? What are you talking about? My advice then would literally be to log, whether on paper or in your head, what the action was that you wanted them to work on and what you want them to do. And, and then look for the next opportunity. Something similar is going to happen again, unless this is one off, in which case, why are you giving them feedback? And when it happens again, don't make the mistake twice. And if you miss that one, don't make it 3 times. Otherwise, you're not a very good manager. I just made this up with 3 strikes and now you're out.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, maybe that's the counsel is, remember it and look for the next moment, because it is hard. You come back 7 days later, and well, why didn't you tell me then? And what happened? I don't remember that moment. And you just lost it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, of course, you still have to eventually give it, or you're not doing your job. But
yeah, great.
Just don't do it on the annual review at the end of the year and you never said anything.
Absolutely. I
totally agree. Me when I was 24 years old.
I totally agree. Yeah, I've made that mistake. I've been on the receiving end of that mistake as well, and it's painful. Yeah. Right. Your the last of the 3 was listening deeply, and we've heard elements of that already woven into the previous 2 answers.
Of course.
But you put an emphasis again on patience as something associated with listening, which I'd love to explore. What does that mean for you?
Well, especially when I think of my younger self as where you started, we already said work. I'm always in a hurry, want to get it done, go, probably like many of us, or you're feeling pressure to get it done, whatever it might be, and you're looking for shortcuts. And I think so often I really thought I knew where the person was coming from, and therefore I cut them off and answered or responded or whatever. First off, of course, that's disrespectful, and I'm probably not really listening, so I'm probably not really learning. But for me, it was more of a impatient, which was, I don't even know. I think I just was in a hurry. It's damn inexcusable, to be honest with you. And it took me I got better as time goes on because people pointed out, but it took me many, many years. When I was head of North America, as an executive committee meeting wants a meeting with the general counsel separately. And she started to say something, and I don't know, let's say 2/3 of the way through, probably I cut her off, started to answer. And she literally said, "Would you shut up and let me finish?" I mean, just right. She punched me. And it dawned on me. She goes, "You do this all the time." I wish she had yelled at me 25 years earlier, because I think I was getting better all the time. But if I thought I knew where someone was going, I cut them off. And that's a patience thing. That's not a listening. Well, it is a listening thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to tell you other than really zip it, just listen. But it takes, I'm not going to say anymore. I mean, it just takes so much.
But that's a great example of someone, linking back to the second point, being courageous enough to say what was actually going on.
You gave me wonderful feedback. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. It was in the moment for sure. It sounds like
you pray for those moments, even if they hurt, because you will get better when people do that. You pray for them. Well, not pray, but you hope for those moments or wish for them.
Yeah. Because in that space, that can be a tricky one when you're smart, you're working, you've got some great contribution that you're going to make, you've got some really good content to share. All of those things are valid and true. So someone's speaking and you've got a really good sense of where they're going, and you might be right. So again, tick, 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 tick. So you interjecting in that moment may feel like exactly the right thing to do. How did you actually come to realize, I mean, experiences like the one you've just shared, but how do you come to realize that, hold on a minute, I need to modify my behavior? Because there's an element of success in you speaking out those things. Why did you see it as a necessity to shift to the listening mode, or to include listening in that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's this, for any one of us, it's an evolutionary thing. I mean, first off, you listen to other people that are cutting everybody off, and what do you think about them? So, if you actually would be a little bit self-aware, I mean, even myself, oh, that's what I just did. Oh, that helps the awareness. People actually telling you, whether it's as direct to that or someone stop pulling you aside and saying, hey, just, let them finish. But I think the main lesson is, how disrespectful is it when you see it happening, and do you really want to be doing that to others? And then, I'm sure all of us have had moments where we were wrong. We cut somebody off and we went down the path that was wrong. If you're successful, it's not a crisis. If you're wrong all the time, you're not going to be in a successful seat. I don't know if I really answer your question, but I think
that's helpful. It's helpful. I'm not looking for the.
Yeah, I know there's
looking for an answer. I'm interested.
these are evolutionary changes in all of us, unless you really, really, really can be, good. I mean, great. It's just shutting your mouth. That's really hard, Just listening. And so, the other, I don't know about you, but not just in life, you start to tell a story and someone, oh yeah, that's really interesting. And they tell you about their story that's to do with and it's like, wait, I was telling you about me for a minute. Now you have to switch it to you. And, the people that do that over and over, don't they drive you crazy? Are they your best friends? Really? I mean, so, I've just learned, sometimes I'm doing it like everybody else. I say, wait a minute, this is not about me. This is about them. I might get a turn, but in the meantime, shut your damn mouth. That's how I have to tell myself.
Okay. Great. Well, there's a lovely sort of Venn diagram of your 3 lessons learned there,
yes,
Joe. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, in your book, The Generous Leader, you've talked about 7 traits, 7 ways to give of yourself for everybody's gain. When we were speaking before we press record today, you talked about kind of overwhelmingly, this is about developing people.
Yes.
And why is that such a passionate thing for you? What is it about that motivates you?
Well, I'll have to write book 2 and say what may have really inspired me to be that way. You got a deep question. Well, okay, I think over time, whether it's Steve, that mentor, telling me this is what you're good at, this is what you're not, or I was smart enough to know, when I behaved like this, things went well. When I did that, I was pretty somehow clever at understanding my strengths and where I wasn't so good. And the thing I learned is I needed to collaborate and team with others, and I needed to surround myself with people who were better in some aspect, smarter than me, whatever it might be. I don't care. I also somehow was humble enough to understand, okay, if I can make all of them hum, guess what? I look good too. So there was a humble and an egoness in there. But if the ego is just, I got to do it all, you also learn over time, you can't do it all. I remember, when I first got promoted, you got like 3 people team. If the team screws up, you could stay up all night and get it done. You don't want to do that all day. But you could, when the team's 10, it doesn't work anymore. And, when you're running a 100-person team, now there's no chance of doing it all yourself.
Yeah.
So I think, somehow, I don't know. I mean, my parents died when I was 30. That probably affect 130, 133. I'm sure that had some impact on me, just how I thought about engage with people. Getting divorced. My mom got divorced when I was 8. My parents. So, there was things that I think just made me more attuned to how people are feeling along the way, but I think the main thing was I just was pretty clear on what I wasn't. I could tell what I was not good at, and I need to compensate.
Now the book has obviously been over a year published now. And I'm going to lean on Stephen Covey here. You've got 7 ways. He had 7 habits. He then wrote a book called The 8th Habit. Do you have an 8th way that has appeared to you after writing the book? You think, oh man, there's one that I if I'm going to write another edition, it's going to include an 8th.
Well,
trait.
It's interesting. Yeah, I actually have an answer to that because I've been criticized by friends and colleagues that, Joe, what you left out of this thing is you have to take care of yourself too, and maybe first. If you're not in a good place yourself, it's really damn hard to stop and listen, to give somebody feedback, to be vulnerable or authentic. And I have to admit, I have a good friend that said, I read your whole book and it's really great, but man, she was a woman. She said, by the way, for women, not to stereotype, she said it's even harder because, we're executives and this, even now they sometimes still feel imposter syndrome. I mean, we all do. So that would be that would take a lot of thinking as to what over time, how did I take care of myself and how did I learn? But I could interview a lot of people, but that would be number 8 is, this, you've got to have this underpinning of strength of your own, confidence.
That's interesting. So it's almost being able to, if I take that word generous, in order to be generous with others, I've got to be able to draw from a well that's full or at least got something in it so that I can give that time, energy, interest to others.
Absolutely. That's interesting. You made me just think just for drawing the well, there was one time where I'd worked at BCG, and this was back when we went to the office. I think we had a computer, but it was Steve, sat at the desk. 29 days straight, every day at the client or at the office. And I just lost it and just exhausted, tired. It's maybe third year on the job. I remember I was meeting with my mentor and he started drilling on Wednesday. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And I just said, Steve, it's been 29 days. I can't take it anymore. I'm out of here. I'll see you on Monday. What are you doing? How can you walk out? I said, I just can't do it anymore. Now I had the nerve and, I was 33, so I'd been around at least a little bit in work life to do that. But that was a little bit of the well. The well was depleted. I couldn't even get my job done, let alone help anybody else.
Yeah.
And I walked out. And, he wasn't going to fire me. But if he did, okay. I couldn't deliver where I was. So he'd probably better off being fired.
Yeah.
But we all have to find our own way. I like your, to fill your well. For me, I was a runner too, or am a runner. And that I might miss a day, but that was a massive priority each day, It didn't get compromised where a lot of other things might have.
Great. Yeah, I was going to actually ask, in what ways have you noticed that you were able to last in consulting for that long? So 37 years, that takes a lot of resilience.
Yeah.
In any profession for that long. But, the consulting has got its own set of stresses and strains that come with it at a senior level. So running was a key thing. What else did you do that helped you to stay resilient?
Yeah, I think a handful of things. One, as you just said, as I said, exercise, running was quite important to me. This may sound silly, but I was very insistent on going outdoors every day. Somebody say, I'll get you your lunch. No, I will walk out there and get my lunch. Oh, it's freezing. I will get cold. Or get a cup of coffee. I'd always get my morning and afternoon coffee. I'd go get it myself. I get lots. Yeah. So outdoors, that little bit, and if I reflect back now and realize that was quite important to me making it. But then I'll say, you asked resilience in 37 years. There's no question. Well, the mentor was one thing, but I had a highly supportive spouse. We had 4 children. And so she put up with me being gone. I wasn't around to see what she put up with. But now I watch my grandchildren. I said to my wife today, I said, oh my God, is this what you had to deal with every day? Yes. Well, more power to you. But I had a very supportive spouse because you mentioned, I was gone 4 days a week for 20 plus years. But she used to say, the day we think you don't want to be home is the day we got a problem. Either you quit or we got a problem. Yeah. And, so now today there's also technology that helps all that, right? You can FaceTime and talk to your kids at night, which is not the same as putting them in bed, but it's pretty big deal.
Yeah, it certainly helps a lot. Well, you've mentioned your family, and I'm glad that you have done. And I see leadership as encompassing much wider than our business circles. And credit to you for calling out the strength of your spouse. In what ways is she a generous leader?
Well, I'm laughing because she epitomizes the generous leader. I've gone to these. Have you heard of Vipassana meditations? 10 days silent.
No.
It's 10 days silent retreats. Of course, it's Buddhist. I didn't realize it was based on Buddhism. I didn't realize when I went, but I went the first time, and I came out there, and I said, "Oh my God, my wife is." At whatever level there, she is there. I thought, holy moly, it's incredible. So she is a generous leader in that she only gives of herself so that others can grow. Now, of course, it's through the children first and foremost, through her friends, through the school. I think a little, I said only twice because I think sometimes we all think a little too many only, Sarah. Maybe you ought to do a little bit more yourself. But, I've learned after 40 years of marriage, she'll still, when we go to our grandchildren's house, she'll do the dishes. So what are you doing the dishes? You're not their maid. Finally, I learned to shut my mouth because she likes helping. And if doing the dishes is helping, it's not my business. That bugged me, but I thought, okay, she wants to do the dishes. That's her version of helping in this moment. So I think that's the way. So, it's all of it. She listens intently. She remembers everything about a person. She's always herself. She's always looking to help. There's not a moment where she can't help, she doesn't do it. Right. There's a pitch for my wife. I got to make sure she listens to that. I told her this before. She knows. I tell her more now than I did before. You learn. It takes time to learn. But.
Oh, it's a lovely it's a lovely realization that I'm what let me get this right, nearly 33 years married, and the realizations even in the last 12 months have been huge, and in terms of how significant my wife
Yeah.
is.
Well, I both have grandchildren, you said, and when you
Yeah.
see that mom become a grandma and she just starts all over again helping, then you think, oh my, this is really commitment,
Yeah. Oh, amazing.
I don't know what your wife does, so I shouldn't judge. That's not judging, no. So I should presuppose.
She's in a similar grade to your spouse, and I'm delighted about that. Yeah. Yeah. Joe, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about these lessons that you've learned and the role of a generous leader in today's business world. If someone wants to learn about this a bit more, how do they reach you?
Well, reaching me, go on LinkedIn, just Joe Davis, BCG, or the book title, and actually leave a message. I will respond. I'll give you my email, and then we can communicate if you want to communicate. Right. I have a website. It's very simple, joedavis.com, where you can learn more, but also there's a contact form there. But fastest thing is LinkedIn. It's a nice little tool. We all know. Yeah. When I was at BCG, most of the messages were for a job. Now they're not. So I didn't like to check them then because I didn't want to, I couldn't get people a job at that level. But.
Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. I'd love to just find out, like you've shared very openly and some of the things, what's been a takeaway for you from this conversation? What are you boxing up?
It's interesting. You know what it is it's how hard it is to learn these things. Because, you kept asking, you didn't ask for moments. So, well, how'd you figure that out? But these, you evolve, people give you feedback, there's clues. That's what I'm boxing away. So if your audience is 18 to 30, when you capture a moment to learn a little bit about how to be a little bit better leader, grab that moment, remember that, put it in there, and look for the next moment. Because they don't come every day, and you don't figure it out just like that. Maybe some people do, but most of us don't.
I agree.
It takes time. That takes patience too. Your own development takes patience.
Yeah, there's a fourth lesson there for sure, isn't there?
Yeah.
Just the patience involved in all of this. Yeah, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate it, and look forward to picking up again. If you write another book, love you to come back and talk about that with us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is great.
Thank you for joining us at the After Dinner Leadership Table, and trust that you've got good value from listening to this episode. Thanks for being here. One question for you. The question is, so what? What will you do with what you've just heard? And here's a few suggestions. Number 1, lead with more purpose. 2, mentor with patience. 3, share with pride. You think of anyone who you know that would benefit from listening to what you've just heard, that would help them to be a better leader today or in the future. Please share, like, subscribe. It helps other people to consume the content. And we wish you all the very best of success. And please listen again to another After Dinner Leadership conversation.